How's it going, everyone? Figured I'd do an update on my Girsan 2311. It's the Talo edition. If you've seen my previous videos, I'm sure you'll recognize it. The few things that were wrong with it, well, not wrong with it, but a few things that I didn't like about it. One was the finish on the slide. It was coming off. It's like a light gray color. Underneath, it's like white. It didn't take very long for it to start just coming off. Like brand new, it was already like that. The trigger was the other thing. It wasn't the worst trigger, but it was pretty bad, at least compared to the other guns that I have. So I wanted to go ahead and have that changed out and just kind of see how it went. One of the first things I did was change out the red dot. I never actually got the one that I ordered with the gun. It's supposed to have come with it. So I tried a couple. I went with the Holosun. I did try the Romeo X Compact, which I really like, but I put that on my carry gun. So I put the Holosun 507K X2 on it. It is a red dot, not the green one, just because I already had it. And I thought it overall went with the look of the gun a little bit better. The other thing I did was change out the internals with the EGW kit. So the mainspring, uh, the recoil spring, sear, trigger, everything essentially but the trigger shoe. Trigger shoe remained the same. I was hoping to get a different one and just pretty much have it plated. I didn't really like any of the designs. I do like the original design itself. One thing that I don't like is that it's polymer, and I wanted to go ahead and coat it gold, but in the end I decided to just leave it alone. It's not a bad trigger shoe. It feels comfortable. I like the design. I just don't like that it's polymer and I can't at this point just kind of coat it. So I just left it as is. I did talk about possibly redoing the finish on the accent pieces, but after just thinking about it, all of it's essentially a thin coating. It's a little too thin. I thought it would wear a little bit faster. It's held up. I've shot it a few hundred times and still no issues with it. All the imperfections are inside. I notice them because I take the gun apart, so I get to see how it's not completely coated on everything, but when it's assembled it looks fine. So I left that alone. And I was thinking about just doing the trigger, I'm sorry, not the trigger, but the hammer, having it coated to match the rest of the gun. But just having that silver, I think, adds something to it. Not really sure what, but I don't mind it. So since it didn't bother me, I decided to just not coat that. The last thing I had been waiting for, which is one thing that I've already mentioned, was the recoil spring. The one it had on there was a little too light, so when I would shoot, it would really slam the slide back and it would throw you off target. And you had to hold it just a little extra firm. The good thing is it has great texturing. Aside from the way it looks, I really do like this texturing. It's really nice. It's aggressive, but not overly aggressive. I don't shoot with gloved hands, so it does make a difference if they're too aggressive. I like the mag well, the way it sits, kind of helps with your hand, with your grip. So once I got that installed, I took it out to the range, shot it a couple of times. I liked it. I'll insert here one of the targets. And this is the last time that I shot it, which was about 2-3 days ago. And you can see it's a nice little group. So all you got to do is just take your time, shoot. It's an accurate gun. I don't recall if that was at 7 yards or 10 yards, but I believe it might have been 7 yards. And one thing that is new that you might have already noticed, if you've seen the gun itself, again the Negotiator 2311 Talo edition, is that the slide is no longer that light gray color. I did take this to Texas Custom Bolt, which is a local shop here in San Antonio. They do great work. I wasn't familiar with them and I didn't realize how close they were to me. I'm not a big fan of sending my guns or parts to other states to have them worked on and then be without that item for several weeks, typically a couple of months, based on their wait times. I had this done in 3 days. Dropped it off a couple days later, picked it up. One thing that I was really happy about is I just took the slide, a strip slide, over to him, and it matched the frame perfectly. This is graphite black, and I think it came out looking great. It looks like a factory looking gun. Nothing crazy custom. I didn't do multicolors, camos, nothing like that. I just like the look of a nice clean gun. I still need to get more magazines for this gun. I just have the original one that came with it. I do have other 2011s, but I found that the Prodigy magazines don't work. They end up failing to feed on this gun. They work perfectly fine on the Prodigy. I have no issues. I know some people have complained about those magazines, but when I shoot my Prodigy, no issues with it. But I cannot use those magazines on this gun. Maybe something about it is just slightly different, but I can use the magazine from this one in my Prodigy with no issues, which is weird. But in either case, I do need more mags for this. That's probably the only thing I need. Everything else, I'm going to leave it alone. I'm not going to add a light to it. I think it'll take away from the look. I like this look. I like the way it came out. This is sitting at about 2 pounds for the trigger. I did a couple of tests earlier. It was 114, 115, and like 201 for the pound on the trigger weight. And it is clear. Yep, here you go. So the gun is clear. I cleaned it up just because I shot it a few days ago. I will continue to shoot this. I prefer 5-inch guns. I just think the balance on them is a little bit better. Some people prefer this type of gun, the 4 1/4 or 4.2 inch. They're fine. I don't mind them, but I just prefer the 5-inch. For me personally, I think the 5-inch just has a better feel for me. I'm glad that I did get that recoil spring because it made a big difference. 12-pound one, I ended up getting the flat wire one. The one it had on there, it made a lot of noise. Sounded like a rusty mattress, like a worn out mattress box spring, if you remember the old style mattresses. So I didn't like that. Plus it didn't shoot as great as I would have liked. This one, it's just a normal sounding spring. It's got enough stiffness to it that it really doesn't slam all the way back, but it's definitely not too powerful. So it cycles just fine each and every time. Everything on this gun from the outside looks pretty factory. Again, excluding the hammer and the slide. Red dot, most people switch them out anyway. But all in all, it's a great gun. The gun itself was somewhere about $900 and something. Don't recall exactly. The internals were somewhere about $180, I think. The red dot already had, but if you get this red dot, it'll run you somewhere about $250. Recoil spring, because it was separate, was somewhere about $15. So that was the least expensive of the parts, but it made a big difference. That and the internals are always going to make the biggest difference, but you definitely need to get that recoil spring. I didn't get reverse plugs or anything crazy for it because I wanted to keep the bushing and the cap on that. So everything else is working just fine on it. I'm really liking it. And I was already getting to the point that if I do anything more to it and still don't like it, I was about to get rid of it. But with a 2-pound trigger, with a great recoil spring that just matches the loads that I use, and I shouldn't say loads, they're actual factory Blazer 115 grain 9mm rounds. For what I'm using, it's handling that great. I have it dialed in right now, so I'm really enjoying that. I will note that if you have any gun and you use a specific ammo, it does make a difference when you're shooting like precise targets, because if you're shooting at steel, you'll still hit it, but if you start actually using a precision style target, it'll change the point of impact by about an inch, and the direction too won't always be just a drop or shooting high. Some of them do shoot a little off to the side. When I was using the Blazer, had it perfect right down the center. When I used, I believe it was Fiocchi, it was shooting to the right about an inch, inch and a quarter. And that was consistent, so it wasn't me. It was the same gun, same day, same everything. The only difference was the ammo that I was using. I was just finishing up a half box that I had sitting around. So it does make a significant difference. I only mention that because I've heard some people say that they can't hit anything with some guns. And it's usually the less expensive guns that get all the hate. But then at the same time, people I've known, they're using just whatever ammo is cheapest. So they're always using different ammo. And I think that might be part of the issue. And I just don't like really people blaming the gun when it's not necessarily them or the gun. It could just be the fact that they're switching up ammo constantly. So they might zero it for one, think it's pretty decent, and then load another magazine with some other gun, and now their point of impact is off. So something to note. But getting back to the gun, this is again the Negotiator Girson Talo Edition 2311 compact, chambered in 9mm. If this is your budget and this is what you can get, you can make it look just as nice. I mean, you can obviously do your own customizations to it, but these aren't bad guns. People just hate on anything that's inexpensive. And yes, you do have to upgrade a few things. You don't have to if you just want a running gun, but if you want to fine tune it, I mean, I highly recommend that you do. I mean, I did, but you don't have to. It's still a functioning gun. Any gun that you have, regardless of the price, practice with it enough, take care of it. You could tweak small things on it and it'll work just fine. I didn't have any really crazy major issues with this gun. I just wasn't a fan of their support. I probably will not be getting another one, mainly because of their support. I don't like to not be able to reach out to somebody, have crazy delays and things of that nature if you ever just have a question. And there's little things like that, but the gun itself is okay. I'm enjoying this one. I'm going to keep this one, and I hope you like it. But yeah, that's my all black and gold Witness 2311.